Hi everyone, my name is Splin and every Friday I issue a video digest of the motorcycle news. Some new models presented at EICMA, a cruiser by Royal Enfield called Meteor 650. The looks of a cruiser is of utmost importance, so let's start with the looks. In my view, the designers of Royal Enfield did a great job again. The bike is beautiful. This is a retro-style bike. Headlight, taillight, mirrors, round dashboard, chrome exhaust pipes, metal-colored parts of the headlight and fender. All of this is quite old school. I especially liked how they managed to integrate the two displays, dashboard and navigation, in the overall style of the bike. The wheels are forged 19 and 16 inch, also the spiked ones would look much better according to my taste. Engine. This is the engine that we already know. This is the one of the heart of the Interceptor and the Continental GT. The engine is a 648cc air-oiled cooled parallel twin delivering 48 horsepower. It was reset a bit, it's half horsepower less powerful and has the same torque, also slightly higher revs, 500 rpm higher. The sprocket is of a different size and the gearbox was shifted a bit. Let's have a look at the suspension. I mentioned the two shocks at the rear with a travel of 101 mm. The fork is interesting as it is the first time in 121 years of its history that Royal Enfield has an inverted fork. Unfortunately, the brakes seem to present the same age as the looks of the bike. Only one 300 mm disc at the front with only two piston caliper, just as Shadow 750, which in my opinion has quite shitty brakes. The rear brake disc is 300 mm. For a 241 kg motorcycle, such brakes are definitely the weakest point. Gas tank is of an average size, a bit less than 16 liters. There are two versions of the bike, the standard one and the tourer one, which has a larger double seat, a windshield, a backrest and cases. The prices has not been announced, but the Enfields are known for friendly pricing. Time for some expensive and luxury stuff. Brough Superior presented a new model called Lawrens Dagger, more sport-oriented version of the luxurious Lawrens. Brough Superior is a British company with production facilities in France that manufactures extremely expensive motorcycles in small batches. The key principle is that any part of the bike has to look like a piece of art in itself. In the 21st century, a sport version of any vehicle implies that carbon is extensively used, and there is plenty of carbon in Brough. Framing of the headlight, part of the fork, engine covers, rear fender, seat fairing, to name a few elements which do not represent it at exhaustive list. The chassis has also been redesigned to sharpen handling. Additionally, the handlebar is lowered to make the riding position more aggressive, and both wheels now 17 inch, so that the client has wider choice of sport tires. By the way, have a look at the wheels, they are just splendid. The engine is a traditional Brough 1-liter V-twin delivering 102 horsepower. Not crazy power, but Brough have never been a performance-oriented bike. What is really important about the engine is that it looks gorgeous in its three-color livery: gold, chrome and black. The exhaust is also new, it's lower and less shooting. The price of the standard version is 68,000 USD, and this one is likely to be even more expensive. The next new bike is an elder brother of Benelli TRK 702, a middle-sized travel bike from China called TRK800. You might be surprised by the two different bikes of almost the same engine capacity. Why so? The 702cc bike is for the Chinese market and the 800cc one is for the European market. Let's have a closer look. First of all, the looks of the bike are close to those of the 502 model. It makes a lot of sense given the fact the smaller model sells nicely in Europe and especially in Italy, where it's top one in 2022. The 800 version has a low front fender and adjustable windshield, handguards, separate rider and passenger seats, engine protection and spoked tubeless wheels, 19 at front and 17 at the back. The engine is a 754cc liquid-cooled parallel twin borrowed from Leoncino 800. It delivers 76 horsepower at 8,500 rpm, quite modest for such a bike. The bike has a 6-gear transmission and sleeping clutch. Surprisingly enough, unlike the 702 model, the 801 has no integrated camera. Suspension is represented by an upside-down fork and monoshock at the rear, all by Marzocchi and all fully adjustable. The travel of suspension has not been revealed following a weird tradition of Chinese makers. We can only guess. The brakes are nice. Brembo, two 320mm disc at the front, and the calipers must be radial for piston calipers. No official specs released. I can only guess by how it looks. No prices yet. We all know the type of the bike that is the most selling one in the 2020s, so there is another adventure bike, also Chinese one. MBP, standing by Moto Bologna Passione, owned by QJ Motor, presented a 1000cc adventure model called T1002V. As we can see from the name of the model, it targets the highest segment of the adventure market, at least 850 GS or 900 Tiger models, offering more capacity at lower price. So, what kind of a bike is it? The specs looks good on the paper. It has surprisingly a 80-degree 997cc liquid-cooled V-twin, not a parallel twin, delivering 95 horsepower at 7,500 RPM, similar to its peers like 850 GS, 890 Adventure KTM and 900 Tiger. The other components also look reasonable. Spoke tubeless wheels, long travel fully adjustable suspension by Kayaba. As you might have guessed, the exact specs are not known. Brakes by Spanish maker Hey Juan, owned by Brembo. No specific data, again following the tradition of the Chinese makers. And there is other cool stuff like TFT dashboard, adjustable windshield, central stand and so on. The price has not been announced, but the clients can surely expect something nice from a Europe-oriented model of a brand with a low awareness. If you are fed up with adventure bikes, here is a piece of news from an Italian maker known as Enduro and Dual Sport bikes. Suddenly SWM presented a cruiser, and there is a great news given the fact that new cruisers are currently mostly launched by American and Chinese makers, with some limited model range with the Japanese makers. And SWM got it right. Classic looks and V-twin. Let's have a look. A bit of sad news to start with. SWM was purchased by a Chinese company Shinray back in 2014. The company that ultimately designed the specific cruiser. But unlike Benelli, SWM is a truly Italian company, as its production facilities are located on the shores on Lake Varese in Italy. Let's start with the engine, which is truly interesting. It's an air-cooled 1202cc 45-degree V-twin, close to famous among Milwaukee bikes enthusiasts. The engine delivers 82 horsepower. The gearbox has 5 gears, quite old school except for the chain drive. The rest of the bike are also quite old school. Steel frame, telescopic fork, 2 shocks at the rear and 2 16-inch wheels. LED light and digital dashboard remind you that it's 2022. The price has not been announced and I'm really keen to learn it. There is very limited range of classic non-American V-twin powered cruisers without fairings on the market. The next new motorbike is also a cruiser, this time a mid-engine capacity and far less traditional one by Chinese maker QJ Motor. So what do we have here? First of all, the looks and the typical headlight suggest the Chinese maker was inspired by the Fat Bob. Secondly, QJ opted for a liquid-cooled parallel twin, also they have a V-twin engine as well. The 700cc engine delivers 73 horsepower, which is not too bad for a cruiser, but one should not expect a cruiser type of torque at low revs. The engine is connected to a 6-gear transmission. The bike is quite nice in terms of the components. It has a right-sided monoshock, not a traditional cruiser solution, an upside-down fork, a steel frame, 16-inch alloy wheels and surprisingly cool brakes. It's two 320mm discs with 4 piston calipers at the front. The gas tank capacity is 16 liters. The bike was conceived as a peer to the Vulcan and to the Rebel 500. The price has not been announced. In my view, the weak point of the new model is non-cruiser appearance, which is not only far from traditional but also looks cheap, at least on the pictures. The last piece of news is something non-traditional. I definitely did not feel like closing this digest with a Chinese cruiser. So here is a new car by Morgan. In fact, it's not more of a car than the Spider by Can-Am, so this is fine for a motorcycle digest. Let's call it a reverse strike. In February, Morgan launched a new model called Super 3, which allowed for heavy customization. and now they launched a version in collaboration with clothes maker Brough. This company contributed to the interior and exterior design, and I will not mention all the details. It's better to just have a look at it. I think it looks quite nice. The cabrio type of the car got a textile non-traditional looking canopy, in case the sun is too bright. You must be interested of the specs. The car body is an aluminum monocoque, the engine is a 3-cylinder engine by Ford connected to 5-gear transmission of a Mazda MX-5. The engine delivers 118 horsepower, accelerating the car to 100 km per hour in 7 seconds, with top speed of 209 km per hour. I really like the fact that in 2022, when everybody is standardizing and unifying stuff, the makers they still produce something that's unique. Also, I would expect comments along the lines of what the heck. So that's it for today. Thank you for watching, like and subscribe. I would really appreciate your feedback and comments. See you next Friday.